All right, welcome to Your Time, Your Money, the show where your time is just as valuable as your money, and we know that. I'm excited for today's episode because there's a really interesting twist on a category of spending money that people don't realize has kind of creeped up us on the over the last 10 years or decade or so.
Yeah.
And then more importantly, because of our guest, we have Tony Filippone, which ironically has the same last name as my co-host.
Yes. And ironically, it happens to be my father. So
Absolutely.
Yes.
And very proud of it.
Yeah. Now we didn't specifically pick Tony because he's your dad.
Yes, correct.
Although that's an added benefit to the guest list invite. But Tony is probably one of the authorities when it comes to managing, training, and understanding the canine world.
Yeah.
And having met your dad a couple times, I didn't really engage in those conversations until I think we were in Hawaii, and I didn't realize how deep down the rabbit hole your knowledge and training of canines goes. Over 40 years,
Yes.
working with canines and
Yes.
animals in general.
Yes, professionally.
as professionally, yeah.
Professionally.
Yes.
Why don't you tell our listeners a little bit about that? Kind of just the history of your career to get started with.
Certainly.
How did it start and what did it evolve to?
Sure. Well, it's one of those things, Mark, where I feel like I was destined to do what I do, because from a very young age, childhood, I had just a natural ability with animals. And dogs specifically would approach me, and I could command them and they would follow me. And it was just almost an innate ability that, I was blessed with.
So the dog whisperer before the dog whisperer came.
Yeah. It was funny, and everything that I leaned towards in my youth in grammar school, I read everything I could on dog training, on animal husbandry, on breeding better dogs, dog psychology. I was even reading books on genetics.
Oh, wow.
The different breeds. I was just a student of, canine behavior, training, the various breeds. And when I was fortunate enough to have parents that supported me. And when I was 12 years old, my younger brother was offered a pedigree dog as incentive for, better marks in school. And I thought, well, I've wanted a pedigree dog for years, but I wasn't going to undermine it. I was going to mastermind it.
Okay.
So I researched the breeds and I researched the breeders, and we fell upon Alaskan Malamutes, and one of my favorite breeds from childhood.
Not one that you hear though, like you know what I mean. It's not a common dog.
No, it isn't. It isn't one of the more common breeds like poodles and golden retrievers and labs and German shepherds, but they are a northern breed, obviously sledding breed, pulling breed. They are descendants of wolves. They have a very, very thick fur. They are highly intelligent. And they are members of the Spitz group versus the Mastiffs. So the Mastiffs and the Spitz. And they are also very willful. Sometimes very difficult to handle. So you really have to know what you're doing with them.
Yeah.
And what happened was because of that, I was introduced to my mentor, Eddie Natal, who was the head trainer and part owner of N-Bar J Kennels in Brooklyn, New York. And I started there I was 12, so that was 1973, and I spent about 4 years with Eddie just learning my trade. I was involved in breed and conformation handling, so I was exhibiting the dogs that we bred at N-Bar-J and that I owned, and I had a canine soulmate, my female Alaskan Malamute named Tanuska,
Okay.
when I was a teen, and I attribute my becoming a professional dog trainer to her because she knew what I wanted before I even asked it, and she showed so beautifully that she literally won every show that I put her in, and I would hear comments like, "Why are we even bothering entering our dog?"
But that's pretty fascinating that dogs are so intuitive to a owner's commands and needs,
Yes,
right?
Yes. When it's the right dog with the right owner, Mark, because obviously, there are a lot of challenging situations out there. And it's like I try and convey to my clients, you have to understand what you're training and what you're working with. You have to understand how they learn. You have to understand what makes them tick. And you can't force a dog to go against its nature.
Yeah.
So you have to learn how to kind of go with the dog and see what the dog's lean is.
Sure.
Some dogs are very cooperative. Some dogs are extremely willful. Some dogs are highly aggressive. Some dogs are very timid. So when I go into a home and I first approach a dog, I try and read the dog and see, okay, what is this dog's energy? Is this dog going to want to try and make friends? Is, a positive contact? Or, is this dog going to try and rip me apart?
Yeah.
Bite me? And
each one's different.
Oh, every dog. Yeah, every dog is different. And, you don't really know on a particular day what you're going to see.
Sure.
And it's, again, I've told my clients that with a dog, it's like with a human being. They have good days, they have bad days.
So you grew up in this world, you're mentored in the world, but then where did that transition to a career and building a business?
Well, the interesting thing is around 1981, it was the year I met my lovely wife, Suzanne, and Justin's mom. And I was getting involved, a business career. And I always thought, I really want to own my own business. And one day I was in prayer, and I am a firm believer in Jesus Christ. And, I profess that. But I was praying, and I was asking the Lord to lead me to something that I could do myself that, would earn enough money to raise a family comfortably. And it's almost like, I joke with people and I say it was like my Italian father, the Holy Spirit slapped me in the back of the head and said, "Hey, I raised you up as a dog trainer in your youth." And I went, "Oh, yeah."
Yeah.
But then I was placed on a path where, for the first time ever, I saw an ad in the want ads for a professional dog trainer.
The old print want ads.
Yes, the old print want ads. So it was 1981.
So before Indeed was Indeed.
Right.
Yeah, long before anything.
You could go on to
Craigslist
Indeed.com.
before all that,
Yeah. So I contacted the company, and it turned out to be Master Dog Training. And the owner was a fellow by the name of Warren Eckstein, who was nationally known. He was the dog whisperer. He was the Caesar Milan of the 70s and 80s, and he was all over. His he and his dogs would go on Regis and Kathy Lee, and I'm really dating myself here. Late Night with David Letterman, and basically I interviewed, and after I interviewed, I had a dogged determination to be the one they hired, and no pun intended, but I hounded the secretary like 5 times a day. I would call her up.
Sure.
I would show up and ask, did they make a decision yet? And basically Susan, the secretary, said to Warren, "You have got to hire this guy because he is driving me insane."
He's working the full-time job anyway, every 9 to 5.
Hey, if you get in with the gatekeeper, a lot of times it opens a lot of doors.
Yeah.
Yes, it does.
Look, I mean, just amazing entry into a field that I think is very unique and niche. And for our listeners, that the main reason we wanted to have you on the show was, the world of pets has consumed so much of discretionary spending in the world of finance right now.
Yes.
That I think it's important to address it as a topic, right? Wouldn't you agree, Justin?
Yeah, it's one of the fastest growing areas of spending that I've kind of seen. There's different companies that are coming out with tons of different ideas. Off air we were talking about a company that actually has dedicated background checks to individuals that will come to your house
just to walk
your dog. So it's evolving past just this normal environment, and billions of dollars are being spent every single year on the pet daycares, pet spas, all of these different things,
apps, subscription
that are going
services.
on. Yeah. And so, obviously having one of the experts in the area, be my father.
Yeah.
It's nice to be able to kind of have you come in and talk a little bit about, what you see in regards to, just overall cost of what it costs to have a dog per year. What a lot of people don't realize is how much it costs just to buy a dog in the first place, especially if you're going to go and get one that, has, some purebred nature to it. Obviously, we support a lot of different areas, and if you want to go to a shelter and adopt a dog, by all means do that. But there are certain people that have specific dogs that they're looking for and specific types that they want.
Yes.
So speak to a little bit, if you wouldn't mind, to what you're seeing in regards to actual costs to go and get a dog, how to properly make sure that it's vaccinated and all of this other stuff.
Yeah, and we're
absolutely.
talking dogs in general, but
Yeah,
I mean,
certainly.
it's literally every pet. It could be,
of course.
it could be an aardvark.
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
but there's unique costs.
Well, just to give you a frame of reference, when I entered the animal industry, it was a $4 billion a year industry, and now it's in excess of $50 billion a year.
Wow.
It's up there with cosmetics and
Yeah.
extraordinary expansion. And what I've discovered is post-pandemic, the costs for just a rescue is hundreds of dollars, as Justin was talking about. If you purchase a purebred dog, and it doesn't even have to be a purebred, it could be a boutique breed. There are so many, golden doodles, lab doodles, burner doodles.
Yeah. They all end up being checkbook doodles.
Yes, and that's exactly it. And with the advent of these boutique breeds, and then with a quality purebred dog with pedigree, you're looking at probably a minimum of about $3,000 to sky's the limit. I mean, I've heard of people paying $50,000 for a specific dog for a specific need.
And that's before anything else.
Right.
Yeah.
That's just
Yeah,
for the dog
That's
itself.
That's the dog. It's not the care
right,
cost.
right.
And or the transportation to get the dog to you or to go to get the dog.
Yeah, precisely. And it's. I always suggest when people contact me beforehand and they say, Tony, we're thinking about getting a dog. We've got a family situation, and what do you recommend? What breed should we rescue? Should we get a puppy? Should we get an adult dog? And I try and lead people based on questions that I ask them about their lifestyle, and is someone at home? How old are the children? Are they going to be involved? Then I kind of direct them either towards, well, you really want the dog. Your children don't want the dog. You want the dog, and because the kids are not going to follow through. They want the dog. They're excited. And a week or two after the dog comes to the house and they realize how much work it is, suddenly it becomes your dog. Yeah. And, and the costs involved, because people will shell out every year on the low end for a dog specifically about $1,350 a year. And that is for the least expensive food. That is for just the basic medical care, just vaccinations,
That's
basically.
Just like old school pet ownership. And I say old school, but like, when I grew up, you really didn't have doggy daycare. You didn't have
exactly.
You didn't have refined water that they drank.
Precisely. So now
Farm
you're looking
fresh.
You're looking at a minimum of $1,350, and that's basically for the store brand of dog food, or your whatever basic brand of dog food, up to $5,500 annually for high-end dog food, for specific medication and quality pet products that people buy, and that's also not even including things like Justin was alluding to, doggy daycare,
and
apps,
and
dog walkers.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's important that our listeners put that in context. It is, and let's just say it's the average of those two numbers. You're talking, 3,000 to 4,000 a year. The average life expectancy on a dog is about 11 years. You're talking $40,000 to $50,000, not counting growth of those assets.
That's correct.
That are coming out of a household income.
Yes.
Right, and it's almost like having a kid in college before college, right? And then you amplify that if you have 2 or 3 dogs,
precisely,
or if dogs live longer. And I was reading a study somewhere that cats are more expensive lifetime because they live 2 or 3 years longer than a dog.
That's correct.
So this is a financial decision that a lot of advisors don't touch on, in that budgeting column. Yeah. Or even ask, like, hey, are you planning on having dogs, or do you have a dog and do you plan on getting one after they pass?
Yes,
right?
Exactly.
Think about retirement, right?
Yeah.
If I know for my parents, they downsized leading up to retirement from a Newfoundland to a lab, which was still a big dog, but not quite as big. But then it was, hey, who's watching it and whatever. Like, hey, it doesn't make sense in retirement to continue having a dog in the household.
Yes.
One, budget-wise, you got to plan for that.
Yes.
And then 2, who's watching it when you're away, or travel, or trips and stuff.
Exactly.
And I was just to say, and you have to think about like the travel portion of things. If you go anywhere, and that's especially when you're retired.
Yeah.
If you're looking to travel, if you're looking to take advantage of the fact that you're no longer working, you're having to pay additionally to have that dog watched, and you're probably not going to go to the cheapest place, because most dogs become part of the family.
Yeah.
So you're going to look at, they're staying at a hotel too, basically.
Yeah.
Yes.
And dogs aren't usually a self-sufficient pet like some are.
That is correct.
Absolutely.
Right. I mean, our extent with my family is a goldfish, and a 7 or 10 day feeder drop in the tank is usually good enough.
Yes. Well, many of my clients, they when they board their dogs, or they have a pet sitter come in, they are not they always look for the best care for their dogs, and I encourage that. Some of my clients even leave their dogs with me because they know that they'll be well cared for and they will be trained and handled properly, in their absence. So several of my clients literally will not go away unless I can care for their dogs. But we were talking about costs involved, and people don't realize that when you bring a dog into a house and that dog is untrained and that dog has not been conditioned to your home. I walk into people's houses where thousands of dollars worth of damage has been done by the dogs.
It's actually funny that you should
Especially
bring that
puppies,
up,
right?
because we were one of our other partners, Matthew Turullo, most recently was the one that got a newer dog. And he was talking about all of the things that unfortunately the dog has chewed up to the tune of thousands of dollars of
chair legs
and pop-up tents and different types of seat covers for cars and
or cats clawing at
cats
leather
clawing at,
furniture.
Now, Justin, if I may interrupt, and Matt, if you are listening, remember I did say, by all means, give me a call. I'm more than happy to speak with you about this. But you see, this is one of the things that, people really don't take into account. They think, well, I can deal with the dog. I can train the dog. But, what I tell people is, you're not a dog. You don't understand canine behavior. So when people try and deal with a dog as if they are dealing with a human child, an infant, the dog is totally incapable of intellectualizing. And unless someone educates themselves on, proper canine training, canine handling, canine management techniques, which basically, after 43 years as a professional trainer, former animal welfare officer with the South Shore chapter of the League for Animal Protection, SPCA. I've trained hundreds of dogs for people, from all walks of life.
Now, do you find that at least the average person that's maybe the husband in the house or whatever, when it comes to a dog, their version of training is more of like, hey, I'm going to just be the dominant figure to teach this dog who's boss, versus actually training?
Unfortunately, yes. There are many of those extremes that I see, Mark, on a regular basis. I see so much mishandling. People who try and dominate the dog with a strong hand, people who try and love the dog out of bad behavior and ignore bad behavior, people who just hope against hope that the dog will grow out of it. That's one I hear a lot.
Sure.
Oh, I thought the dog would grow out of it. And it's like, what? You're seeing canine behavior exhibited by a puppy. The dog is not going to grow out of it. And another one that I hear a lot, which I love and it makes me laugh, is they should know better.
Yeah.
And I say, no better than what? A dog?
Yeah.
It's a dog. It doesn't know better.
So it's interesting with so many years of experience. What was maybe one of the, tough situations that you walked into, maybe where, the dog was more aggressive, and, how do you work through that?
Well, see, that's where my many years of expertise and my background in canine training, personal protection dog training, service dog, therapy dog, very aggressive dogs, highly aggressive dogs that are, as we refer to them, dangerous dogs with vicious propensities. Generally, those dogs are inherently aggressive. It's inbred in them. And there was a 6-month-old male pit bull that I had evaluated several years ago for a young college student. I trained a dog, actually 2 dogs, and one exhibited aggressive behavior. And I saw this 6-month-old pit bull puppy, and I put him on my lead, and he came at me as if I were his worst enemy, and he literally wanted to kill me. And I said to the young man and his girlfriend at the time, I said, listen, I said, this is a highly aggressive dog. This is a dangerous dog. I said, I'm sorry. I said, but I cannot help you, and I cannot train this dog. And in good conscience, I would not be able to look myself in the eye and say, you know, I can train your dog. So he said, no, thank you very much. I appreciate it. Yeah. Now, I don't tell people what to do, but I make recommendations. So, you know, contact the breeder if you have a situation with a highly dangerous dog. But what I will tell people is seek the assistance of a qualified professional trainer, because the average dog trainer is not qualified to handle aggressive dogs or to rehabilitate them, which I have done literally dozens of dog aggressive, human aggressive dog rehabilitation, because conversely, a lot of dogs become aggressive because they have learned to become aggressive. So it's trait, and that can be altered. It's challenging to do it. You really have to know what you're doing. But you know, it's like I tell people, when you get a dog, you can spend as little as a few $100s to train it, or you can spend as much as tens of thousands of dollars to train the dog, depending upon what you want.
And that's a unique industry in itself, you know, for people looking at, you know, getting into an industry because they love animals and stuff like that. I mean, I would imagine from the security defensive end of training of dogs for, you know, higher net worth people that use them for protection.
Absolutely.
You know, that's probably a pretty lucrative career field to be in.
Absolutely, it is. And, you know, people now are realizing, you know, the value of having, for instance, a service dog, a companion dog, you know, a seeing eye dog, and you know, it's $25,000 minimum, for a certified service dog,
plus the time.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, I remember I was having some, you know, off podcast conversations with Phil Kuntz, who's a Navy SEAL that had come in, and you know, it centered around canine units in the special forces, and the amount of time that it takes to train one of those dogs is the cost itself.
Yes.
Because it's not like every dog can be out there in a war zone or thrown out of an airplane with a parachute.
Hundreds of hours
within 1 month of training.
It is hundreds of hours of intense training. And, you know, personal protection dogs, there are different levels of protection dogs. So, you know, just like anything else, you know, there are different training schedules and techniques and methods that we use for, you know, a basic phase 1 protection dog that's pretty much like an alarm dog and a warning dog, all the way up to a phase 3 protection dog that will retrieve weapons, you know, protect against multiple assailants.
The
There's a
keyword
lot
dog,
involved.
like, you know.
Yes. There's a lot involved, and again, people like myself, that have a background and expertise in the various disciplines, protection training,
Sure.
Service dog training, therapy dog training, as well as home pet obedience training, which is my specialty. But I also want to touch upon what to do with your dog's potential care after a dog owner is no longer alive.
Sure, and that's a good transition. We get asked often, or I wouldn't say it's asked often, but we get told a lot that, like, I want my money to go take care of my dogs or my cat or my pet, and they think it's just going to happen.
Correct. Yeah.
Without a legal document or anything along that lines.
No.
And what are those options though for an individual passes?
Well, really, the most secure is to build it into your estate plan, because if it's not in your estate plan, then it goes into just a general fund in your will, and if a specific caretaker is not named, if it's not in the estate plan, that this individual will receive, say, $5,500 a year, for the dog specific care, and then another, say, $5,000 a year for ancillary costs, things of that nature, then it just, unfortunately, goes into this, general pool of money. And when it runs out, it runs out. And also, there are now options with, like Justin was alluding to earlier, specific organizations that care for people's dogs after their death, and geriatric dogs, and they live a very comfortable life, and then all of the owner's wishes are then satisfied, because if the dog is cremated, they are the ashes are spread on the owner's grave, or buried with the owner. So there's a lot to really think about, because as we know, we're transitioning. Pets are becoming more like our children, rather than just our pets.
And those are things that our listeners want to build into their estate plan,
Precisely.
and they also want to look at the world of insurance for pets too.
Yes.
You hear a lot of hip replacements now, and things that are like $10,000-$15,000 for a dog
per side.
Yeah, which now there's this whole industry of pet related insurance.
Yes.
Obviously, just like insurance for humans, where there's deductibles and copays and what it covers and what it doesn't cover.
Yes.
And I think it's only a matter of time before you start seeing more and more of the pharmaceutical type reps going into into the veterinary clinics. And I'm sure they do.
It's already.
Right.
It's already a huge portion.
And what we're seeing in Albany
of the business
with the vet clinics is a lot of them are consolidating down to larger conglomerates coming in and buying veterinarian facilities.
Yes, yes, they are.
But that industry itself is multi-billion-dollar.
Precisely.
Vet clinics now have multiple surgeons on staff, multiple specialties on staff, and you're talking equipment that's MRI quality, equipment. So you can kind of see that cost is not going to go down anytime soon.
No.
Yeah, they actually have a 24-hour emergency vet clinic over here in Latham, and there's constantly cars at all times of the night, no matter when you drive by.
Yes.
And I think one of the big things that we touched on a little bit was just the overall cost of the pet insurance side of things. But I get calls constantly from clients saying that my dog had an emergency, or they found a lump and we had to bring them in and they needed surgery, that they didn't plan for.
No.
Yeah.
I need money.
Yeah.
And the only other place that they can get it is either through taking an early distribution from their IRA or from their retirement account or something along those lines. So, as you were alluding to, Mark, it might be a good idea for some of our listeners to look at, insurance. Sometimes you hate to pay for it, but when you have to use it, you're really glad that it's there.
Exactly.
Versus, not paying for it and
Yes.
then, saving the extra $75 to $100 a month or whatever it is, and then having to come out of pocket $5,000 to $10,000 for something that you didn't expect.
Exactly.
And I think the emotional, mindset of a client with their pet being close to that of a child in some cases.
Absolutely, they won't hesitate.
There's not really a hesitation in that, because they know that if something did happen physically to the animal, that they're going to go the extra step to make sure that the animal survives.
Yeah, absolutely.
Exactly, Mark. And that's another thing. People do have to understand that many dogs require sophisticated medical care. And
certain breeds.
Yeah, certain breeds have chronic illnesses, chronic issues, and it is quite costly to people. And the unfortunate thing is we talked about pre-pandemic and the cost of things versus post-pandemic, but during the pandemic there was an absolute rush of people to obtain dogs, cats, pets, and now
everything, jet skis.
You're a sheltered in place. What else would you do besides get a dog or have a baby? Right, that's another big thing.
Now,
kids being born.
Baby boomer generation of COVID.
Yes,
the COVID generation.
Post-COVID, now the shelters are inundated because people didn't count the cost of just how expensive it is to own a pet.
And I think as we wrap up, that's a good leeway into some of the organizations and nonprofits and charities for listeners to understand that's valuable to donate to. I mean, I know we've done volunteer work with ASPC down in the Hudson Valley one. They have a massive warehouse of bottles that need to be sorted, and that's how they generate over $250,000 from bottle donations alone.
Excellent.
For animals. Shout out to one of our partners that we work with. That's a client, and that's Four Tails Vineyards down in Arizona. They have 4 dogs and they have a winery, and they combine the two. So that's an exciting part. That's good for the episode. A little bit of a community shout out to Four Tails Vineyard. Check them out as well. And if you want to find out information about how Tony can help you in your own interaction with your animals, I'm sure we'll post on our site a nice link and contact information for him as well. If you have questions, you can always reach Iron Tree Financial at irontreefinancial@ceteraIS.com. You can reach us actually at 800-222-3202 is a great phone number. You can really send in any of your likes on any of the social media platforms: Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, you name it, and keep track of our adventures for this year, because we're excited about it. So Tony, we're excited to have you in today.
My pleasure.
Thank you so much for enlightening our listeners a little bit in the world of the canine world and that type of stuff. And I don't think it would go without saying that it really is a line item now on a budget that really needs to be well thought out. And just in that context of what you were talking about, sometimes the cost of not having insurance is the lawsuit that comes later, from something that maybe isn't intentional by your canine or animal, but that does happen and injures other people. So you do really want to take a serious look at the insurance end of protection.
You absolutely do. And, you really do want to safeguard yourself, your family, your neighbors, your pet. Don't just assume that your dog is going to know better. That make sure that your dog understands that they are to be good canine citizens, not menacing people, not threatening people, biting people, if you see these issues, then absolutely contact a professional, a certified dog trainer, qualified canine behavior specialist, so that they can assist you. Because if you try and go it alone, sadly, many people end up in a situation, Mark, like you were just alluding to, where sadly,
Lawsuits
the dogs, they find themselves in a lawsuit, and more dog owners are being held criminally responsible for their dog's behavior. So, it is something that people have to understand. It is a huge commitment to bring in a dog or a cat, to bring in a pet of any kind. Time commitment, financial commitment. You really do have to count the cost and really dig down deep and say, you know what, I'm really willing to do whatever it takes.
Yeah. Is this the right decision
Exactly.
for me and my family?
Yeah. Right. To have this animal.
And do your research on the breed that's appropriate for your family.
Precisely.
Your location.
Yes.
Obviously it's tougher to have a like a Newfoundland in Florida
Yes.
than it would be in the Northeast.
Yes.
So do your research, as a kindness to the animal as well.
Or an Australian sheepdog in an area where you have no
sheep.
land. There's nowhere for it to run. Nothing. You can't do anything. Yeah.
Do your due diligence. And I always tell people, consult a professional.
Exactly. Just like we say.
Yes. Ask us our opinion. So just like people, come to you guys for financial advice, seek out a professional,
Absolutely.
That can help guide you, in the right direction.
Excellent.
So, thank you guys so much for having me today.
Yeah, no problem. Hopefully our listeners enjoyed today's episode, and as always, it's your time.
Your money.
All right, guys, thank you for tuning in to another episode of Your Time, Your Money. We really appreciate it. If you enjoyed today's episode, please feel free to share this with friends, family, coworkers, anyone else that you think might be interested. If you do have questions or topics, you can always email them to irontreefinancial@ceterais.com. Please follow us on LinkedIn, Facebook, Spotify, Google Play, and many other sources that were available. And you can reach us at 844-444-YTYM. And as always, it's your time and your money. Cetera Investors is the marketing name of Cetera Investment Services. Securities and insurance products are offered through Cetera Investment Services, LLC, member FINRA, SIPC. Advisory services are offered through Cetera Investment Advisors, LLC. Cetera is under separate ownership from any other named entity.